Let's make my mirror mirror quilt pattern using fat quarters. Fat quarters are 18 inches by 20-inch rectangles, and this pattern is available as a free PDF pattern in 5 quilt sizes: baby, throw, twin, queen, and king, which I will link down below in the video's description. For today's video, I will be making the twin size quilt measuring at 64 inches by 82 inches. I am using Spooky and Witchy and Decostitch Volcanic for my background fabric, all from Art Gallery Fabrics. Although I am using Halloween fabric, Mirror Mirror will also look great in any other prints. It's a very universal pattern. Now let's get started. With each fat quarter, subcut one 6-inch square, 8 2¼ inch by 6-inch rectangles, 4 4-inch squares, and 8 2¾ inch squares. Since we are working with fat quarters, the free PDF pattern includes a cutting diagram to help you yield all of those necessary pieces just for reference. Then with your background yardage, you will subcut 48 2¼ inch by 6-inch rectangles, 48 2¼ inch squares, and lastly 24 4¾ inch squares. The remaining background yardage will be used for your border. Now it's time to create a quilt block. Select one background 4¾ inch square and 4 2¾ inch squares in the same print. On the wrong side of the 4 print squares, draw a 45-degree line with a fabric marking tool. Then lay the background square right sides up and place one of the print squares on the corner and the other in the opposite corner, right sides together. The diagonal line that you drew will go in the same direction, and the 2 print squares will overlap each other in the center. You may need to pin these down in place for added help, as you will sew a 1/4 inch seam allowances on both sides of the line that you drew. Then you will cut on that line that you drew to create 2 wonky, weird heart-like shapes. Take one of the heart-like shapes and 1 2¾ inch squares and place it right sides together in the opposite corner. The line that you drew will go through the center of those 2 print fabrics that overlap each other, and then you'll sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides of that line you drew and cut on that line to create 2 flying geese per each heart-like shape. You'll repeat this step to the other heart-like shape, creating 4 flying geese. Lastly, we will trim a 1/4 inch away from that top point of the flying geese, leaving you with a 2¼ inch by 4-inch flying geese. You'll repeat all of this again until you have a total of 8 matching print flying geese. Now we will create one of the block units. Take 2 flying geese and a matching 4-inch square in the same print as your flying geese, and lastly a background 2¼ inch square. You'll then form this block and sew the blocks together into rows, and lastly sew the rows together to create a 5¾ inch square. You'll repeat this step until you create a total of 4. Next, take one background 2¼ inch by 6-inch rectangle, one print 2¼ inch by 6-inch rectangle that matches the flying geese, and one secondary print in a 2¼ inch by 6-inch rectangle. You'll place the background rectangle on the left side of the flying geese print and then the secondary print on the left side. You'll sew them together on the 6-inch side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving you with a 5¾ inch by 6-inch rectangles. You'll repeat this step 4 times. Now that all of our units are created, it is time to piece the final quilt block. Take 4 of those quarter star-like blocks and the stripe blocks. plus a 6-inch square that matches that secondary print, and place your blocks out like so. Sew the blocks together into rows, and lastly, sew the rows together to complete a 16.5-inch square. Make a total of 12 quilt blocks, and because this pattern is called mirror mirror, I created a reverse mirror block of the same two prints, but of course you can mix it all up. Now that all of your blocks are completed, you will lay them out in a 3 by 4 block layout and add a 2.5-inch wide sashing between your blocks and rows. Sew the blocks and sashing together to form rows, and then lastly sew those rows together to prepare for our border. For the twin size border, you will cut 6.5-inch wide strips and add them to your quilt top. Within that free PDF pattern, the border width will vary depending on the quilt size you've chosen. This was done so that no quilt is way too small or way too large. And here is what my quilt looks like all completed. Stay till the end to see a larger photo of the finished quilt, since these blocks are once again pretty huge. For the backing, I am using Liquid Magic from an older collection called Sweet and Spookier by Art Gallery Fabrics. Then for the thread choice, I am going with Glide threads in the color Lead Gray. And here is what my quilt looks like all quilted out. For my longarm quilters, I chose one of my newest patterns called Cranium, which I will link down below. Since this pattern is called Mirror Mirror, I had to quilt a face on it just to have fun. And of course, since it's Halloween, why not a skull? Now do note that this skull pattern is designed for the quilt top to be placed on its side instead of the standard position from top to bottom. And here is a larger photo of my mirror mirror quilt pattern. Once again, this pattern is available as a free PDF in 5 quilt sizes: baby, throw, twin, queen, and king. And I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.